It is time. It's time to stop hiding. It's time to stand up. It's time for Christians to come together, share their testimony, inspire others, inspire hope. Join their brothers and sisters as we answer the call. It's time, folks. It's time to wake up the lions. And we have an absolute lion with us today. Please welcome to the show, co-founder of Appian Media, which I can't wait for you folks to hear about, Craig Dehut. Craig, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, better than I deserve, man. Like I said before, 100%. Absolutely. Listen, I cannot wait to get into all this and talk about your project and what you've been working on. Before we get rolling with that, let me just throw it to you. Tell everybody, who is Greg DeHut? What are you about? What brings you here today, man?
Sure. So my wife and I live here in the Indianapolis area. We've got three kiddos, homeschooling the three of them, and that does play into the story of Appian Media and why we do what we do. It's always good to be reminded when I wake up in the morning and I see my kids to go, they are the reason why that we're doing some of the things that we're doing. But I trained as a video professional. I went to film school back in 2005, um, and graduated with dreams of Hollywood. Major motion pictures. I was going to write and direct, award-winning Christian films. And God taught me some other things and led me on a slightly different path. And between working as a barista and animating video games and working, as a DJ on the radio, kind of worked my way into television news and discovered that I really enjoyed telling stories about real people and real events. And so in the news, they're called packages, but they're 60 seconds or 2 minutes. But you make something longer than that, and it's called documentary. And that's basically what I've been doing now for the last 10 years, combining my love for storytelling and video production with my faith and my love for God's word. And so that really was the impetus behind starting Appian Media and the work that we do with it.
That's wonderful. Now, just from the story right there, it sounds as though, Christ has always been a part of your life. You were raised that way, I'm just guessing.
Yes, yes. My father is an evangelist. Technically, he's semi-retired, but when you tell a preacher to retire, like, but yeah, we grew up in Oregon. Actually, Dad preached out there, and that's where all of us were born, my siblings and I. But his work actually led us out here to Indiana, where he preached for a congregation in southern Indiana. And so, yeah, I was introduced to Jesus from a very early age, but I didn't really make him my own until about the age of 12. This could be a whole different podcast, but at the age of 10, I was actually diagnosed with a type 1 diabetes, and I nearly lost my life in those first couple of years. And that sobers a kid up, and it forces one to ask questions that most humans do, but usually they do it in adulthood. What's going to happen to me after I die? And
Yeah.
why do bad things happen to good people? And how could a loving God let things like this happen? Those are all questions that we all have to ask. And I was asking those at 10, 11, 12. And
Wow.
thankfully, God has good answers to all those questions. And the hope that he offers to those that believe in him about what will happen to us after death helps us not to fear it. And so, from about the age of 12, I was baptized into Christ and made him my Lord, and try in my, feeble way to live after him and serve him. But it really instilled in me very early on and in our various creative endeavors, my siblings and I, that I wanted that to be a part of my work somehow. Maybe not necessarily preaching full time as my father has, and several of my siblings have. I do that on occasion, but was trying to find a way to combine my love for art and creativity and storytelling. And it took 20 years, but eventually found that combination.
That's a fantastic story. I cannot imagine what that would be like at that young age to get hit with your own mortality. Your relationship with God at that point, I'm guessing that that helped you to be at least be able to have that conversation, in your heart about
Yeah.
next steps and what, may and may not happen,
Yeah.
as opposed to trying to find him then, for the first time.
Right. Yeah, I can't imagine having to go through that without a knowledge of him already, because, leaning on him and being able to pray and believe that there was a higher purpose than what's happening in the immediate. Yes, I was very thankful for that. I wish I could say I handled it flawlessly and was incredibly mature about the entire situation. That's not the case,
Right.
and it probably took until high school, like late high school, for me to stop being angry about it, or bitter about it. There were some days where what do they call it? It's almost a martyr complex, a superiority of I've been through this hard thing and kids my age don't. And that's just foolish. It's very selfish. Everyone's going through something,
Sure.
and it doesn't take long for you to find someone who's going through something harder than you. And so the idea of making yourself somehow superior. So God taught me humility. It took me many years, and He's still working on that. But I think it's important. Everyone needs to experience difficulty, and a loving God will allow us to it. He'll be there with us as we go through it, but teach us things along the way. I learned things at 12 years old that, I mean, I've met some grown adults who have not learned those lessons yet. They will eventually, and I pray that they've got the wisdom to see it. I needed help along the way. My parents were incredibly supportive, my mom especially, and not just with what I was going through with the difficulties, but as we developed creative interests, our parents were always incredibly supportive to, oh, you want to do, community theater? Sure, let's sign you up. And oh, you want to take art classes? Well, we found a place down the road that can do that. Um, oh, you want to shoot movies in the backyard? And we ended up with a used camcorder from a friend, and that's really kind of how my professional trajectory started, was in the backyard.
I love that. Interesting. It's great that you have a supporting, family and that everybody's kind of supporting your ideas and your dreams, and things like
Yeah.
that also. I'm sure that helped, kind of foster, where you ended up. And I say ended up as if you're done.
No, far from.
I mean, we had a conversation earlier where, I mean, I was off by like, I don't know, 11 million views or something on something you were doing. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, you're definitely growing and moving forward. Take us, I guess, jump us forward in terms of how, God has impacted your life. Uh, do you feel like you were called to take on this cause with Appian Media?
Mm,
Because it's not just a video company. You didn't just say, hey, I just want to go make videos like I did in the
right.
backyard. There's a distinct purpose to what you're doing.
There's a purpose, and I'm always so hesitant to speak for God, to go, I'm sure that God was doing, like he is. He's active and working, and I can usually in hindsight go, absolutely he was involved with that. The story of Appian Media wasn't maybe quite so obvious. But there was a need that my co-founder Stuart Peck and I saw about 10 years ago. Well, this September it will be 10 years. He and I were recently come to the Indianapolis area. I did not know him at all, but you've got another person who believes in Jesus, who also works in film and video, and of course you want to meet for coffee and talk. And it didn't take us long for us to sit around, kind of talk shop, but also recognize that in our Bible classes, we were seeing young people becoming more and more disengaged with the study of the Bible. They're spending their days learning like this, right? And they're
Right.
learning with headphones on, and they're learning with visuals in front of them. And then they would come to at least the Bible classes that we were a part of, and all of that would be put away. And we would bring out, flip charts and maps that were probably made 40 years ago, and say, now learn this way. And we would open the book, and I mean no disrespect to the book. That's how God chose to preserve his word. It's worked for millennia. The written word is not to be discounted. But there are ways to help us learn the book that we just weren't seeing used in classes. And so it was actually Stuart who, at the time, was working for HGTV, making home renovation shows. He was used to working in that kind of fast-paced, authentic, and I put that in quotes, storytelling, and said, why why can't we make something? We can't find it online. He was really searching, looking in YouTube for something that was free, that was professionally produced. Because, we can all kind of acknowledge that there are people who have traveled to the Bible lands, they've created documentaries, and they're just hard to watch. They're not put together well. Or maybe they're put together very well. They're very professionally done, but we were finding many that we kind of had to give caveats to, like, okay, this video is it's very well done, but it's coming at it from this particular slant. And so, this is not based in accuracy. This is based in their own belief system or tradition. We just wanted videos that told us what the Bible said, showed us the places where it happened, and did it in a way that was fun and engaging to watch. And so Appian Media was born the fall of 2015. And we've been blessed now to have made many trips overseas and create documentaries and teaching material to help kind of fill that need that we were seeing a decade ago.
Love that. As we're talking about this, one of the things that I read that you had said, you have a three-pronged approach to this in terms of professional production, accuracy, and free accessibility.
Yes.
Let me kind of dive into those just for a second. The
hmm
the accuracy you talk about, I'm assuming, is biblical accuracy.
Biblical accuracy, but also to the very best of our abilities, geographical, historical, and cultural accuracy. And
Nice.
so, when you go over there, the study of archaeology is ever changing. You can't always go to a site and they know with 100% certainty, but we do our very best to like this is what they're saying with the evidence that they have right now. And so, in fact, there's a scene that we shot of the city of Bethsaida. It's near the Sea of Galilee. It's where some of the apostles were from. And even when we shot it in 2016, we understood that there was another site that could also be Bethsaida. They weren't sure. So we picked one. It was the one that there was the most that we could see there. Well, excavations have been done since that time that probably the other site is more likely the biblical Bethsaida. And so we are planning to go back and shoot some new content. Um, and that's part of what we do. We do as much research as possible. We talk to experts, oftentimes on camera, archaeologists or historians. So we want to be accurate to the evidence there, geographical, historical, and cultural, but very much so at the heart of everything that we do. We want to be accurate to the word. And so if the word says it, we're going to say it. And we're not going to skimp around or dumb it down, or make it more palatable to today's culture. We're going to speak where God speaks and tie that into some compelling visuals to help people really see the Bible come alive.
I love that. There's so much in that, what you just said. I mean, so many things. The first is that you're just not willing to, and I use this on the show all the time, tone down the God thing. So that's just
Yep.
not part of your makeup.
No.
This is it.
No.
This is him. This is the word. That's that.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it. Love that. Absolutely love that. But when you can tie, historical and geographical, facts and stories and the location and all these other things into the word, that just seems like it hits so much more powerfully, especially with the younger generation today.
Yes.
Is that what you're finding? And is that one of the reasons why you're
Absolutely.
doing it that way?
Yeah. So to go back a little ways, I was raised in a homeschool family and went away to college. Took a year at a community college in Southern Indiana, and I remember my very first English class. Writing all those essays, and they said you need to cite your sources, but you can't use the Bible as a source because it's not a reliable historical text. And I, raised my hand and went, can we point out the fact that there's actually more, manuscript and historical evidence to that particular document than anything else? And they didn't care. You can't use the Bible. It's not reliable. And then I went
Wow.
away to film school. I went to art school, and it was even worse. I mean, not only was the Bible discounted, but Christians were vilified, including myself. And that's what a lot of our young people are growing up into, or either, maybe they're not growing up with it, but then they go to college and they're inundated with it, where you can't trust the Bible, they say. It's not reliable. It's full of contradictions, they say. And for those who don't know, who maybe don't know how to defend against that, it could be something easy to believe. Or at least they want to say, listen, I like the Bible, it's got good moral messages, but I can't count on it to be historically accurate. Well, one of the main things that drives us to do what we do is we want to help people know that they can have faith in the text, every bit of it, and that the history does support it, the archaeology does support it, the geography supports it. There's quite a bit of geographical information in the biblical text, and we want to show people that. So it's not just, you know, believe it because it's in the book, and the book is real because the book says it's real. Like that's circular. Um, Believe it because I can go to the land and show you that whoever wrote these various books and letters, Paul and Moses and all these others, had an unbelievable understanding of the history and the geography and the culture of the time. You cannot get me to believe that someone wrote it later just to push a message or change a culture. No, these were people who clearly were living there at the time in the place. And we can prove that by showing you what has been found. And that should be encouraging and strengthening to everyone who does already believe in Jesus. But it also, and we've seen this, become quite a very effective evangelistic tool for those who may not believe already. Maybe they don't trust the Bible and never have, but we hope that our tools can be used to help at least introduce them to it. This can be trusted, and therefore, what does it say and what does it mean for us?
Nice. We're going to come back to the vilified thing in just a minute, but
Yeah.
the question I really did want to ask you, though, before we kind of move away from that part, is you mentioned homeschooling, of course, which
Yeah.
for the last few years has just exploded, it seems like. Um, the with what you're doing and with the films that you make and the productions that you create, I know that homeschooling's part of it, but I guess as a target, who are you doing this for?
Good question. Yeah. So it's true. I was homeschooled my entire, from kindergarten to, high school, until I went away to college. But I'll be honest, when we first sat down and created Appian Media, homeschoolers weren't necessarily our target audience. It really stemmed from the lack of what we were seeing in Bible classes. And I would say that fairly generally, Bible classes in your home, Bible classes at your place of worship, Bible classes in schools, even, Christian schools that may teach that kind of stuff. We just weren't seeing this. And so really it was the classroom, but you better believe that very early on, you start advertising free videos, about the Bible, and homeschool families latch onto that. And so it has become very clear to us that there's a market there as well. So for the last probably 5 or 6 years, we have made it a goal to attend 2 to 3 homeschool conventions around the country. And so Appian Media is there with a presence. Usually we'll do a variety of workshops and have a booth. And I love hearing from homeschool families about how they've taken our material originally written for a Bible class and they've modified it because homeschool families are very creative that way. They've modified it to stretch it out for a school year. And it's just been really fun and really exciting to see how they've latched onto that. And now my wife and I homeschool our kids at home, and that's been really exciting and encouraging for us that we can adapt some of this material to them. And it's fun to watch my own kids go through the material.
That's great. I love that. And so everything is everything free, or is there certain things that are free,
I wish I could
accessible?
say everything was
Yeah.
free. All of our videos, 100% are free. So every video we've ever made, all the feature documentaries, docuseries, even all the
Wow.
behind the scenes, completely free.
Yeah.
There's no paywall. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on our website. In fact, there are many distributors, Right Now Media and Faith Life TV and others that are distributing that as well. We do print some premium workbooks that are lessons that accompany the videos through the use of QR codes. So every lesson, you can scan a QR code and watch a portion of the video, and then it'll take you through the biblical text. Those are printed. Those are not cheap to create, but it's a fundraising mechanism for us, and it's really kind of become the heart of what we're doing is creating a curriculum for every video series that we've done. But other than that, it's free. And that was something that we simply were not finding. We did not want anyone to be hindered from growing in their faith in this way. And so we removed the barrier of cost. We removed the barrier of poor production value, because that can be a barrier for many. And we removed the barrier of any having to give any caveats. You have to understand that this might not be completely accurate. No, we removed all that. Let's give you what it says and what it is, and do that for free.
I mean, I love it. That's amazing that you're offering everything you're doing. I mean, it's a ton of work, and you're
It
just
is a
giving
ton
it
of
away.
work.
That's,
Yes.
I mean, good for you. That's incredible. Let's go back a little bit because the when you mentioned that you were vilified, and especially you in particular, or you in person, experience that sort of thing. One of the things that I've been talking about lately on this show has been spiritual warfare and
hmm
how people encounter it in so many different ways. You're talking about filmmaking in Hollywood, so I mean, that's almost mainstream. Like, of course, you ran into some, you
Right.
know, some blowback. But tell us about that and other ways that because you wear this on your sleeve. I mean, you're very
Yeah.
open about, your faith and what you're doing and why. What kind of resistance have you met with, and how has that
Sure.
gone?
I wish I could say that I wore it quite so obviously as a young person. I didn't hide it, but maybe I wasn't as upfront about it at times as I should have been. I did train from Hollywood professionals. I did go to school in Atlanta. And so that's kind of become a second Hollywood, as many people have recognized. Um, Many of the teachers were incredibly nice in certain circumstances, and all of them were incredibly good at what they do. I mean, a lot of them were actually working in the industry during the day and then would teach classes, and so we were getting, sitting at the feet of the best, and incredibly thankful for what they taught us. But it did not take. I mean, it was within the first quarter of that first, that first year in film school, where it was very obvious that they understood, correctly so, what people can do with this medium. Filmmaking and the entertainment industry in general has the power to change the minds of the culture. It used to be hard to try and convince Christians about that 20 or 30 years ago. I don't have to argue with them now anymore. The evidence is so obvious, painfully obvious, that we can get people to think and feel and do things simply by putting entertainment in front of them long enough.
Yeah.
And so much so that our teachers actually referred to us as culture changers. They were like, "You're entertainers for sure, but you are actually culture changers." And many of us were like, maybe you're overplaying this a little bit. And their point was, and I agree with them, they said, who else would you let talk at you for hours at a time? It's not a conversation. You don't get to talk with them. The writers and the directors get to stand in front of an audience of hundreds, thousands, millions of people who willingly open their brains and sit with their mouths closed and their ears open as the filmmakers get to dump information inside their brain. And they do it in a variety of ways that if a good filmmaker does his job well, I can convince you of almost anything. And many times you won't even realize I've done it until you start thinking a certain way and have to track back. Where did that idea originate? Oh, it's because I've been watching these films or listening to this music or hearing these podcasts that have been telling me that this is reality, this is truth, this is moral. And so they commissioned us. I mean, they really, that's the best word to describe it. They commissioned us to go out and change the culture in our own image. And
Hmm.
it took me about 6 months to even identify another person who acknowledged the existence of Jesus there. These were nice people. Many of them were good people. I wasn't necessarily wearing, Jesus freak on my, t-shirts or blasting it out, but I wasn't hiding it when the conversations would come up. But we had teachers who spent full class periods talking to us about the hoax of Christianity, talking to us about how the Roman government created Christianity to keep the masses under control. And so they invented Jesus, who communicated things about loving your enemies and submitting to governing authorities and living peacefully. And they did all that because they were just trying to keep the masses under control. And so, young Craig raised his hand and kind of went, "Well, can you help me explain to me then why for, 200 years afterwards, Rome then persecuted everyone and tried to stamp it out?" No, well, that's just part of the conspiracy, and so we would debate. I would debate. My fellow students would go, "I wish this guy would just knock it off and let the teacher do his thing," because they really did single me out on many occasions and say, for Christianity, for example, Craig, tell me some of the tenets of blah 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 blah, and they wanted us to understand that was not welcome. That was not welcome in the stories that we were telling. That was counter to the things that they were trying to communicate to the culture. And in many ways, we can see, based on the films and the shows and the podcasts that have come out in the last 50, 60 years, it most certainly is not welcome. I have been thankful to see the culture shift a bit. It's at least getting a seat at the table now. There's many films that have come out that don't hide their faith and are doing very well. But that was not the case 20 years ago when I was in school.
I think there's a lot of people who think that this just started, and you're sitting here talking about decades of
Yeah,
this. And even 20 years ago, when you were in school learning this, it was already established at that point.
yeah,
It wasn't like it was new when you got there.
yeah.
So we literally are talking about decades of just indoctrination, of
Yes,
anti-Christianity propaganda.
yeah. Do you remember?
Wow.
I remember as a
Wow.
small child, 5, 6, 7 years old, where they'd say there are subliminal messages in Disney cartoons, and people
Oh
go,
yeah.
"That's ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
It would never do that." Of course there were. 100% there were. And sometimes it was an animator just trying to be, snarky. Oftentimes the filmmakers 100% knew it. It goes through various stages of revision and everyone knows it's there. But it's not so much like someone hid an extra frame but it's what were the characters actually saying? Think of the Disney cartoons from your childhood that showed a complete family unit, a mother, a father that loved and respected each other with kids that obeyed their parents. Can you name one? Because I struggle. I
Yeah,
struggle. Like
honestly, no.
cartoons, you know, there was always a missing parent or both of them gone.
Yeah.
In many cases, the parent was the antagonist. You think of The Little Mermaid, the father is the guy who keeps the mermaid from having her hopes and dreams of, going to
Right.
the parents were communicated that way. And that's been happening for 40 years. And now it's no wonder that the family unit is falling apart, at least in this country and in many other countries, because for the last 40 or 50 years, we've been telling audiences this is the way that family looks like, instead of showing them what it ought to look like. And I mean no disrespect. Sometimes a family unit isn't that way, and it's not anyone's fault. A parent dies, or there are a variety of reasons why that might be. Maybe both parents are no longer there, and the child needs to be adopted. That's not the kid's fault, and that's not wrong. There's a blessing in adoption that we see, but we shouldn't only communicate that this is what family looks like. Because what do you know? That's exactly the way that families are now beginning to look like as a majority in our country, and it's not doing a service. As you can see, I could clearly get on this soapbox and go
I
for
love
for hours and hours.
it.
but I almost feel responsible in a way. I never made movies like that, but I sat at the feet of the people who did, and there were even times where it's like I was influenced by them more than I wish I was. After 2 years, I got out, so I didn't even get a bachelor's. I couldn't actually take it anymore, and thought I have enough skills. Let me go out there and carve my own path. Um, but it's still happening, and they're not even being secretive about it anymore. They're just saying it out loud, and audiences are taking it.
It's just amazing that simply by modeling something over and over and over, that people see that as the norm, and then they adopt it, and then
Yep.
we end up copying it.
Yep.
It's absurd if you spell it all out and speak it. You're like, I can't believe I'm actually saying these words. But then you look at reality, and it's actually what's happening. So
Yeah.
it's amazing to hear from someone inside the industry that it's not only being taught, but that the agenda is like part of class.
Yes, absolutely.
So, wow. I certainly appreciate you being open and honest about that today. For anybody who gets to listen to this and hears that. Um, and it's an interesting segue. I could talk to you about this all day because it's fascinating to me. And unfortunately, we have a time frame. But that is a good segue into building discipleship, though, because I think when people think of, we're all called to build discipleship in some way, shape, or form. And I think
Mhm.
when people hear that, they go, well, I can't stand in front of a group and, give some big dissertation to everyone and talk to thousands of people, on a mountaintop. No one's asking you to be Moses,
Mhm.
what God's asking of everybody, I think, and I want you to weigh in on this, is to do what Hollywood's doing. And that is lead by example, show what it looks like, talk about why this is the way to go, and then let people say, hey, that looks pretty good. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to work on that. Let me get into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah. Absolutely. Like I said, I come from a family of preachers. I've got brothers-in-law and my father and all of that. And not everyone is called to be that. Not everyone, excuse me, not everyone has necessarily that particular talent to stand in front of a group or even in a small group and teach in a way that is effective. And yet, I believe exactly what you said. We are all of us called to be disciples and make disciples. And so the mother at home who's training children, she's discipling. I see that with my wife every day. She's doing so much teaching and training and discipling of these young hearts and these souls. That is essential work. That's such important work. And it is no less valuable than the man who may stand in front of thousands of people and preach.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean no disrespect to either one of those, but we've created the hierarchy just because we think, well, this one got more views, the guy's sermon is live streamed, and so therefore it's more important than the mom who was home training a kid and no one saw that. No, that's valuable. There are people who they work in industries where maybe they're not preaching the gospel or teaching it in such a overt way, but you're communicating with your colleagues on a daily basis. What kind of example are you showing? What kind of light are you shining? You have the potential of discipling there. We think about even in the business world, even in the secular business world, the people who are modeled after as being mentors. Another word for that is discipling, right? You are training people by your example and by your wisdom to become better than they are.
Mm.
And so what we are doing, it's not our wisdom and it's not our example. It's we're trying to model ourselves after Jesus. And when people see that in our lives, they want to model that as well. And you can do that in whatever job you're in, the food industry or retail or coding or we are all called to be that. And so none of us are exempt from that. Sometimes it's more
Yeah.
obvious and more overt than others, but we're all called to do it. And so, there have been seasons of my life where I'm not necessarily making content that's being seen by a lot of people online. I mean, there were 6.5 years where I was schlepping coffee And but I was interacting with other human beings. And what kind of light can I be? What kind of example can I be to my fellow baristas? Um, and so that's what I really try to encourage people is, if you can get into a field where you can have an impact, we have the blessing of technology that now allows us to communicate with people from across the planet. We didn't get into this, but the whole concept of Appian Media, the word actually comes from the Appian Way. This was the roadway that Rome built, right? So as they
Mhm.
were taking over the known world and in their military pursuits, they were connecting these countries, these nations, with this in very impressive roadway. And many parts of it still exist today. We understand through history that it was actually one of the key reasons why the gospel spread as quickly as it did because for the first time in human history, there was a near unified language, Greek, and there was a connected, very effective roadway that connected these countries. And so, the gospel wasn't carried by email or text or video, it was carried by word of mouth and by letters carried on these roadways. And so we created Appian Media with the concept of the internet and media are roadways that already exist that connect the entire planet. And in many ways, it crosses even linguistic barriers. Why can't we put the gospel on that roadway? And we've seen it even with the content that we've produced in the last 10 years. Our videos have been seen in over 160 countries. And we can see the analytics. Some of these countries are places that are not currently safe for a traditional evangelist to go and evangelize, but they have video. And so they're watching the gospel and getting that. And so that's what we're called to do in every aspect of our life. And people can find a way to communicate the gospel and disciple in whatever arena they're in.
I love that, and thank you for bringing that up about the Appian, the name Appian Media. I was going to ask you about that when we talked about the YouTube thing, which is now.
Okay.
So,
Sorry to create the segues for you.
no, you're doing a great job. Honestly, if I'd have known it was going to be this easy, I would have brought a sandwich. We could. But I love what you're doing. I love your story. The You have a YouTube channel in addition because we're talking about spreading the word. We're talking about
Yeah.
building discipleship in different ways. You do it obviously through your videos, in a fantastic way. But not just to the folks who are homeschooling, but to anybody else who finds your YouTube channel. And
Hmm.
like you just said, it's worldwide in places where they shouldn't be watching that YouTube channel, and
Hmm.
somehow they are. So you're breaking barriers with that, which is amazing as well. The YouTube channel is the Appian Media. Is that right?
Hmm.
People can find it
Yep.
there. And you have how many views on that so far?
On the YouTube channel, I think it's about 14 million. But through our other distribution partners, it's about 20 million at this point.
I mean, about
So
20 million views.
yeah,
It's imagine trying to have a conversation with 20 million people about, God.
yeah.
I'm not sure you could do that in a lifetime. So I love the way you're using technology. You're using what you've learned. You're using your skills to just get the word out and get people thinking, get them talking. It's absolutely amazing what you're doing.
Well, we've got a very talented team. This is certainly by no means a one-man band. Even though Stuart Peck, our co-founder, he did choose to step away this past fall. We've got an incredibly talented group of team members, writers, and hosts that make this possible. And an incredible set of donors, individuals that donate to the mission. That's how we give it away for free. We don't generate revenue in the traditional Hollywood style. We're a 501(c)(3) and people donate. So there are people all over the world that see the value in this and help make that possible. And we're just excited. We're excited to see what God's doing with it and to be used in whatever way He desires.
I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. And power to you, and continued success on all of it. I think it's just fantastic. Yeah, Craig, you've brought so much to the program today. I really, really appreciate everything you've done and that you've said. I want to make sure that I'm getting every drop out of you because you're such an incredible resource. So,
Absolutely.
one of the things we talk about here, and the name of the program is Wake Up the Lions. And it's to get the idea is to tell stories and get people to get a little more comfortable telling their own.
Mm,
and, get them out the door talking about this or using their talents somehow to in their avenues to spread the word, a little bit. So as someone who is obviously a lion out there, just spreading the word, using all of your God-given abilities and talents to do this, what can you say to folks who are just kind of like maybe you were, decades ago, and they're just a little shy. They're not sure if it's okay to speak out. They're not sure if, they have a place in this. What do you have to say to those folks who want to wake up but maybe don't know how or feel like they can't?
sure. Um, I don't want to put on a front for people who've known me for the majority of my life. I was the quintessential classic, like antisocial homeschool kid. I was not particularly comfortable around people. I certainly couldn't look you in the eye and hold a conversation. And my parents did such incredible work to prompt us and encourage me in that. And so getting a job at 15 where you have to talk to customers, getting into community theater where you have to now be comfortable, speaking in front of an audience. Um, but just being confident enough in my faith that I could then communicate that, that's been a lifetime pursuit. Um, but the encouragement that I would give to people who may be feeling like I'm just not doing what I should and I don't know how to begin, the encouragement is begin. And for the first many attempts, perhaps years and years, you're not going to start and go, I've just converted 14 people in the first week of event. Like it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. We are not called to convert people. We are called to sow seed.
Yeah,
God
nice.
gives the increase. But the parable of the sower was not that he planted and then he hung out there and waited to see what would. No, he planted and then he went off and planted and then he kept plant. That's our job. And that actually is when it kind of dawned on me that that's the responsibility. It alleviates such pressure on yourself. I've got to make this work, or why didn't this person respond in the way? Because it must have been me. We need to make sure that we're throwing the right seed. But if we know, look, I'm just telling what the Bible is saying, I'm just communicating what God wrote down, that's the seed I'm throwing, just do it. Just start with the people that you know well. Start with the people that you've got a relationship with. Don't start with strangers. I find that's still very intimidating. But start with the people that you know well, that you've got a relationship with, that understand you're coming at it from a place of love. And that will then encourage you and give you the courage to approach a stranger. We have found a really effective thing with the church that we're attending here, where we spend time some weekends just in a parking lot handing out Bibles free. So we've got signs, free Bibles. We're not necessarily prompting them to engage in conversation with us. We do enjoy that. But it's not one of those like debate us kind of situations. It's just, do you want a free Bible? We've got a lot of different translations here, and it prompts conversations. That's one of the easiest things that I have found. People love free. They love free,
Right.
and it starts a conversation. It's very non-confrontational. Find ways like that you can just start. Appian Media did not start with millions of views. We started, and after the first year, we had put out our first 5 videos of Following the Messiah, our series about the life of Christ. And I remember that first month, we were thrilled with the fact that we got 3,000 views.
Hmm.
We were over the moon, like 3,000 views. It was amazing. And then it grew slowly and surely. We have not had any kind of explosive growth. But over the last 10 years, we have seen God give increase. And we haven't, we try not to stop too long and wonder, why isn't it growing faster? Why is it slowing down? Why is it? I have to be careful with that sometimes. Our job is to sow the seed. And your listeners, the people listening today, your job is to sow the seed. Find a way to do that. Know the word well, and let God give the increase.
That's just amazing. I love what I'm doing right now because I haven't had a single episode of this where I haven't learned something or had a great takeaway from it. And if you don't mind, I'm going to steal that.
Absolutely. It's not mine.
100%.
I mean, I certainly didn't originate that.
That's right. So I appreciate it. And I mean, wow. Craig, I appreciate everything that you've brought to the program today and your openness and your mission. I wish you all the best and all the success in the world on what you're doing. It sounds like Appian Media is well poised to continue to grow and hit another 20 million in addition to what you got really soon. So power to you, brother, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, great conversation. Um, Co-founder of Appian Media, Craig Dehut, another absolute lion. Folks, this is why we do this show. What happened today? Because at the end of the day, it's time. It is absolutely time to wake up the lions. More than that, it's time for you to take your place, just like Craig has, and like I'm trying to do, with your brothers and sisters, and let them hear you roar. The world's ready. You're ready. Believe it.